Oh, is it time?
It is time. Merry Christmas.
Sweet.
Impromptu post-Christmas. Oh, Happy New Year. Just before New Year video.
Sweet.
Salud.
While this is being captured impromptu, it doesn't actually have to be posted impromptu. We can save this one for Easter if you want.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So I watched the video of the guy that you sent me about the communism.
Socialism.
Yeah, right.
Socialism.
Don't let me ever make that mistake. Oh shoot! I don't have the.
It's the spelling that's different.
I don't have the. Here, I'll use this. Fuck it. I'm gonna use. I mean, I just killed this. I just killed our damn child.
I've been editing out all the swear words, and it hasn't made a difference.
Yeah, but you say the C word one time and you get struck. We gotta watch out.
Yeah. It was disinformation. Yeah, I'm not going to say the C word. Now, other than this is my second strike, so I had to open the Techno Shaman channel on YouTube. My first strike was for hate speech against the LGBTQ community.
Huh.
And as you may or may not know, I do not hate the LGBTQ community. I'm not anti-gay.
Maybe it was something I said.
I'm down with the gays.
Could it have been something I said?
No. On the last one, probably was, but on mine, it was just me, and I was the algorithms are garbage. AI is still not subtle enough, and apparently humans at YouTube are not subtle enough, because I was steel manning an argument from an anti-gay conservative, and then taking that to its extreme conclusion to show how it is BS.
Wrong.
And so it took that as me being hateful. So subtlety is lost on algorithms so far.
This is only just a little bumming them out, because you want to have these good conversations. We feel like we're trying to do it in good faith. We're not trying to spread misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, any kind of crap information. And you engage in these conversations, and it's making me think.
And it happens.
You know, it's like the algorithm is.
Yeah. We're not the only one. I'm not the only one. I hear a lot of YouTubers complaining about this. If you're a large YouTuber, usually you can get enough people to complain, and then they really look at it and go, "Oh, okay." But I am the opposite of large. So,
yeah,
in fact, now that we're on the Techno Shaman YouTube account, we have all of 2 subscribers.
God love both of you.
So
I think one of those might be me.
Yes, thank you. It probably is. I'm banned for 3 months on the Tecnoblix channel, so I can't.
Jeez.
I have a blurb that I wrote. Yeah, they spanked me hard. 3 months.
Damn.
Do not talk about world-altering events that started in 2020. Just don't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can leave that one. We can leave that one. In fact, if we made our conversations central to capitalism mindset versus socialism mindset for even just the next few hours, that would probably give us a lot of fuel. Anyway, so I watched that guy's video, and I wrote down a couple of things because I just want to be able to make sure that I can remember them super quick, and I won't have to remember them at all. Now I can just look over my notes and read them. Just a few things. First thing, exploitation at the point of production. Familiar with the concept?
Yeah. Yes. His video is, or his YouTube channel is Second Thought, by the way. Why you should be a socialist in 2024.
Yes.
Just to make sure.
Yes.
I get that up there.
So exploitation at the point of production. Now, this goes back to something that you kind of called me out on a while back, and then again, not so far back, in that I might be a victim. And it's a question of, and not just me, but everybody. And it's a question of mindset.
Capitalist Stockholm Syndrome.
Yes, capitalist Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah. So that is going to boil down to a question of, do you feel victimized or not? And ultimately, that's going to be up to the individual, I think. Because...
Although capitalist Stockholm Syndrome would say that you do not feel victimized, even if you are. That's the whole thing with Stockholm Syndrome.
Right. Stockholm Syndrome is about you're being a victim when you
siding with your enemy.
When you don't necessarily feel like a victim. However, here's the difference. If you've got true Stockholm Syndrome, you're going to make you're not going to be in response. You're going to be in reaction. The reaction is going to probably be one of survival. It's going to be a survival reaction, and it's going to hopefully help you to survive, and hopefully, with any luck, I'll get out of that situation and then carry on with, a normal life, not in reaction. But ideally, when we're talking about human consciousness and free will, if there is such a thing, which I hope there is, we're talking about being in response rather than reaction. Animals react. Consciousness responds. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're trying to say, and I disagree, but I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay. Is there?
I mean, I get it. I get it.
There,
that is the classic idea. That is classic psychology. That is Ayn Rand psychology. That is psychology before evolutionary psychology and lack of I get what you're saying.
When you disagree, do you have something in particular, a point that you'd like to say? Well, here's why that isn't the case, or do you have a contradiction or a paradox that you can raise for this, or
no? Well, it's
or is it just something that you feel?
No, it's the free will, and I disagree both with that there is no free will and that there is free will. Uh-huh. I think there's a not necessarily a middle road. I don't think there is free will except in, and this is going to be a little conscious contemplation when you're thinking about thinking. I think that's when you can initiate some free will. But otherwise, if you're going about your day, doing your thing, I don't think you have free will. Unless you constantly stop and live in the now and are second-guessing every thought that goes through your head, which you can't, because that would make you go insane, there is no free will until you do that.
You might even go so far, if I was going to steel man the no free will concept, you might even say that when a person is in the flow, that state that everybody loves to get to because it feels so good and everything goes through so right and so awesome in multiple ways. When you're in the flow, that might be that point at which you're expressing the least amount of free will at all.
I think You're right. You're just running on
Although I don't
instinct.
necessarily agree with that at all. Frankly, I don't want to make this thread about free will real quick.
Okay.
But just if I was going to just say why I don't really accept the no free will thing is, number one, there's two things about it. Number one, for a lot of people, and this isn't everybody, but for a lot of people who believe that free will is an illusion and that they more actively embrace determinism, I think they're doing it, and anybody can step up and put me down on this one if they think I'm wrong, but I think they're doing it, frankly, to shirk responsibility. If determinism is a way to just kind of be like, now I'm not responsible anymore, and so I don't...
I think that's a weird way to take it, because I don't believe in free will, and I don't shirk any responsibility.
Okay.
I try and go out of my way to maintain responsibility. I am up to my eyeballs in responsibility,
which is great.
That sounds like the whole Christians not believing atheists are atheists because they're trying to shirk responsibility.
Or morality.
That sounds like a religious argument.
You're saying it's analogous
And
to
you're not religious.
It's analogous to the Christian argument that atheists don't believe in God because of morality. They don't want to be moral, right? That one, yeah.
Right, and that is also not true. I mean, there may be something to that for some people. I'm not going to say that nobody is a determinist, but I think anybody that's actually contemplated determinism and free will are probably not the people trying to shirk responsibility.
Probably not. That's why I come back to Sam Harris on this one, because he's a big advocate for free will being an illusion, but at the end of the day, you've got to.
It's a handy illusion.
It is handy, and that's kind of where we go with it. At the end of the day, you've got to just look at what can result from any given philosophy or belief system or value system, whatever. And this is one that I think you can connect the dots on, follow the pattern, and realize that if somebody really doesn't believe in free will, they're probably just gonna prematurely turn in their meat suit. Why bother? And sadly, I think that if somebody is dealing with a certain, just even the smallest amount of any kind of depression,
that's more nihilism than the lack of belief in free will. That
could be the result of, like, say, just for instance, as a possibility, gender dysphoria. If you're experiencing the depression over something like that, over something that you really just have no control over. I mean, depression as the result of brain chemicals, that's one thing. That's take a bill for that. But if you're experiencing depression due to, body dysmorphia, gender dysphoria,
existential crisis,
whatever, once you start to introduce the concept of the illusion of free will, too many people are going to be like, well, that's just great. I'll just end it now, because without free will, I'm gonna do this one last act of free will, and that'll be it. To make sure that we don't get struck for that, let me just give the disclaimer. If you're experiencing any feelings of mental health or whatnot, please seek help.
I don't think that's going to help, but that's fine. If we get I don't like getting banned. I don't think that follows. I think the understanding that there's no free will, or that there's some other mechanism other than what we call free will, I think understanding that, or at least questioning that, allows you another tool to help manipulate yourself. If you think all there is free will, I would posit that you would put all your blame on the person. You're just lazy. It's your fault. You have free will. You need to do something. You can use
the word blame if you want to.
I don't think it's that black and... Because we do.
Some people do. When I say responsibility, it's not really about taking them. There's going to be things that you can be responsible for that you don't hold any blame for. Right? You're responsible for your dad,
but you have to.
You
there's
don't take blame for him
reason.
Getting old. That's just nature.
Right. But we have reason. And when you are only a free will advocate, you're putting all the onus on the individual. And this is where you're coming from. You have had individualism driven into you since birth.
Is that a bad thing?
And I don't know if you know this, we're a species. We're not individuals. None of us will ever exist on our own. Unless there's some weird cataclysm and you find yourself at the end of the world, and then you're going to die on your own. But generally, we are a cooperative species, and you're just not going to survive on your own. So the rugged individual is also, I think, a myth. And I think it's a detriment, but I could be wrong. How the hell do I know what I'm talking about? I think there's something else. I think there's something else. The afterlife. I was waiting, man. I was waiting for you. I think there's an in-between of what's the saying? If only a Sith lives in extremes or believes in extremes,
something like
or
that.
deals in extremes. I'm not Sith. The universe is way more complicated. We're way more complicated. The reason, my whole basis for not believing in a free will, but still acting as if there's a free will, and this in between thing is, I know 99% of my decisions are happening unconsciously, and if it's unconscious, that's not free will. An unconscious decision is not free will. That would be that flow state.
I would probably argue that
my
too.
Consciousness is dealing with the and one of the things that really solidifies that for me is taking care of Dad, where he has become detached and his consciousness is not up to speed with reality. So there'll be times where he's slightly out of it, and I'll turn him around and push him up to his bar so he can help get in bed. And he goes, "What are we doing?" He's like, "Oh, you were getting in bed." He's like, "Oh yeah, I was getting in bed. I was feeling a little tired." And he decides that it was his decision that he was getting in bed. He did not make that decision. That was totally unconscious. And in fact, I manipulated it. So most of our decisions are subconscious, not free will. To me, if it's subconscious, our consciousness becomes aware of it and tells the story of why we wanted that. Our consciousness, our awareness that we are projecting and that we are experiencing, our experience is us rectifying the urges that we've already decided on, the ideas. Now, that's why I say that free will can be after the fact if you're dealing with your consciousness and thinking about the thinking. That's when free will takes into account. So if you're sitting back and making a plan, your free will is to manipulate your subconscious into a direction that you consciously have contemplated. So that's why I say there's an in-between. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's that blend of free will and determinism, and I think it happens at the same time. And we need to be more nuanced about that. But that's how I feel.
No, that's probably pretty
It's hard
good.
to talk about that way,
That totally works for where I was going with the whole free will question with regards to exploitation at the point of production and whether or not we're a victim. Because that's what that was really frankly all about. You see, if somebody's being
victim of circumstance,
victimized in any context, it's going to come down to a choice of how they choose to react or preferably respond. Because obviously, if you're being victimized, you're going to react, and if you're thinking about it, and you're exercising that that illusion of free will, you're going to actually come up with something better, and you're going to respond. Perfect analogy is chess. If you're playing chess in reaction, you will lose every time. If there's two players playing both responsive chess, then you're going to have something that is, compelling game to watch and will come down to the battle of wits. But if one person's in reaction and one person's in response on that chess game, the response person is going to win every time, even if they're not that good of a chess player, frankly. But if they're responsive, and of course, skills at chess are going to boil down to becoming going to build that toolbox
results may
that
vary.
Can be responsive more of the time. So there is a little thing that I've loved. I heard it many years ago. I've got it written down on my desk here to remind me of it, so that I can know why I make what I make. And this is going to boil down to whether or not I believe myself to be a victim of exploitation at the point of production. Okay? This is a personal belief. I believe, for better or for worse, and for me throughout most of my life it's been worse, that there are three things that determine what I earn, what I make in money. Okay? One, the need for what I do. And this can work in music as well as in hardware tech. Obviously, as a musician, there's a need for what I do. The world needs musicians. Okay, there you go. And there's hardware, so the world needs hardware techs. The second thing is my ability to do that thing. Now, if we were talking about music, as a musician, I've been probably a flailing musician for all of my life. I've never really just put the practice into it like I should. I've never put the 10,000 hours into becoming a master at any one instrument. If I had, perhaps my career would have looked different. As it was, maybe as a musician, let's put it this way. For a musician, I'm a pretty dang good entertainer. So my skills,
Competence is
my
important.
skills as an entertainer are pretty good, and that's my ability to do music because I kind of just I'm a half-assed musician. My ability to be a hardware tech,
Better than half-assed musician.
my ability as a hardware tech, that is what it is. You know, you and I both followed the same trajectory in terms of computers. We started young. We kind of loved them. We wanted to know how they worked. We tore into them. We learned how to build them, like the Magic Legos. And now I put together big giant server cabinets. In terms of skills, in terms of skills,
Competency.
compared to the rest of the market, which that's what you would need to do. I know what I know. That's all I can say. I can pass the CompTIA test every time, ace it, and that's pretty much it. There's going to be plenty of hardware techs and computer gurus out there who can totally pass the CompTIA test. It's not that difficult of a test when you get downright frank with it, and so that's good. It's kind of like the baseline. There's additional certifications you can get if you want to. I haven't bothered. It's not going to enhance my salary. So there's the two things of the three: the need for what you do, your ability to do it. Third thing, the cost that would be incurred by my employer to replace me. Now that's an interesting one when you're talking about music, because you could say as a musician, at least in terms of my solo show, I'm self-employed. So what is the cost incurred there in replacing me? Well, that's going to boil down to the customer at that point. And who are my customers? Not the people who listen to me. Amazingly enough, my customers are the venues I play, the restaurants, the nightclubs, the whatnot. They can replace me very cheaply. They can replace me very cheaply. So I am stuck, in terms of a musician, at getting paid the going rate for a half good circuit musician. The going rate is going to be whatever that happens to be for a given area, so that can be anywhere from $50 to $500, and there you go. And I have to just be happy with that. If I'm not cool with getting paid $50, then I don't play that venue. If I want to get paid $150 and they only pay $125, I'm not going to play that venue. You know, however that, that you get that idea. In terms of GE,
now I can already tell you.
Okay,
I can tell you where your
Hold
Stockholm
that thought one
Syndrome
real
is
quick,
coming
because
from.
I'm going to give you a chance to tell me exactly. The cost that would be incurred in replacing me as far as GE goes is going to be, I don't know. I honestly don't know what it would cost to replace me. Probably 6 months of learning curve. They're going to pay somebody half of what they pay me right now to come in fresh. They would go over my very well-written procedure manual, my SOP, standard of procedures that I wrote. They're gonna go through their 6-month learning curve. So for 6 months, they're not going to be worth a damn. And after 6 months, they're going to be earning what they are getting paid, which is about half what I make. And then after about a year, they might be up to where I am in terms of production for GE, and they won't be making nearly what I make. So you kind of get the idea. So essentially, those are the three things that I believe determine my salary, whether we're talking about music or whether we're talking about GE or whether we're talking about acting in Hollywood or whether we're talking about massage therapy or whether we're talking about anything you want. The need for what you do, your ability to do it, the cost incurred in having to replace you if you chose to leave. And so there you go. Now, the source of my Stockholm Syndrome you were going to tell me.
That you're stuck in those rules. You've been convinced that you're not a victim because you have forced yourself into that little box where the employer determines your value. And then you mentioned Hollywood. Can Brad Pitt be replaced? If the part calls for, they cannot. So the venue's ability to replace you is solely determined on how much you work in the system, how much of a part of the system, how much Stockholm you have in your blood where you're conforming yourself to the system. If you were on YouTube and had 10 million followers and you were playing at a club, how much would it cost to replace you? I would argue your value is what you made it elsewhere, not what the club owner tells you it is or thinks it is comparing to other people. Your value, if you put your effort into it and build yourself up, is completely detached from what a club owner is going to pay you, because you have your own fans, your own value built up over taking in art, for instance. So you're saying how well you can do something, again, arbitrary, because if you've built your brand, and this is art, this is really pretty much in art, if you've built your brand, it doesn't matter how good you are. It matters how many people like it that you do it. Not how well do you do it. It's how you do it based on your brand and how
say
people
that for the branding,
like and perceive
for the branding
you.
part, that is part of the skill involved. Because there's plenty of people who make it on not a lot of skills, but who have got a ton of skill in branding themselves. And so that's the skill that we're really talking about, not the musicianship, but the skill in branding. Jennifer Lopez is a great example of that. She's a fantastic dancer, and you might even say she's got some delivery in actressing,
and that's
now
about
that she's
it.
had a chance to do it. and I've seen her become a lot better of a singer over the years. But when she first started out in singing, it was hurtful to listen to. I'm so sorry, Jennifer Lopez. I know you probably think very highly of yourself, and you don't even know who I am, so I don't even care.
Yeah.
That you don't even care. But the idea there was, she branded herself and made it in spite of the fact that she was a really marginal singer at the beginning, but probably a top-notch performer, frankly, with an ass.
But for you, you've convinced yourself. Your Stockholm Syndrome is your oppressors have convinced you that they're right and they control your value.
I don't know that I would say that. I know what... Right. See, here's the thing.
I know you wouldn't.
Here's the thing.
I know. That's part of the Stockholm Syndrome.
We'll start there. As a hardware tech, I know what I would make at some other employer, right? And I know that it's less. The GE pays me more than a lot of other employers would be willing to pay. Why they opt to do that, I don't know. I think it's probably because they want to have really quality people. And so I don't feel victimized at all at the point of production. In this case, I feel quite fortunate to have been considered quality people. Now, if that is Stockholm Syndrome, and then that's something to take into consideration. But I do feel like that. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road in terms of what I make. I know that I want to make more. I want to make $1 million. I don't have any illusions in my head about doing that as a hardware tech. That's not realistic. What's realistic then, if I want to become a millionaire, is to do something else that a millionaire would do, like write a bunch of songs and get them published, or spend 10,000 hours on an instrument, or find a way to make my brand awesome, which, by the way, this YouTube experiment that we're doing is part of that. Part of the brand experimentation.
It's part of the brand.
Trying to establish a brand and make a brand and see where that can take us. Not just me, but us. So that's what that is. You can think of it as an investment even, frankly. But as far as exploitation at the point of production, and whether or not I'm a victim, I'm not sold on that yet. And in fact, if there's anything at all that I can say on behalf of that, is that if I were a stock, I feel like GE is investing at least some in me as a stock because they are willing to pay me at that market rate that is so handsome,
Sure.
that makes this position of mine so enviable. But if I was a stock, I would invest in myself, and hopefully I am investing in myself with everything that I do. And I haven't made $1 million on this stock yet, but I'm still alive and I'm still breathing. So we're gonna have to let people decide. Am I a victim?
Now,
Am I a victim of Stockholm Syndrome at the point of production? Am I being exploited at the point of production, or am I just these three items: the need for what I do, my ability to do it, the cost incurred in replacing me?
right. There are very few extremely wealthy people in power. There's very few,
Well,
and
that's
they
what
make
you've
all
said
the money
before,
and they make all the rules.
we don't want to necessarily consider this an argument against that right now.
So
You've got to know that I don't totally agree with that. But carry on. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's your.
Right.
That's Sean Penn.
No. This is part of it. You don't have to recognize oppression. You don't have to understand that you're being oppressed if you're being oppressed. That's the whole point of Stockholm Syndrome. That's the idea. I should probably find a different
I think it's
non-Holocaust
okay,
term for it, because it's a
I
little.
think it fits the analogy just
I think
fine.
it's just as existential.
Yeah, it does have other connotations.
Yeah, but it has other connotations. But people that have Stockholm Syndrome defend their oppressors. They believe that their oppressors are correct and that everything they're doing and the rules that they made are the best and for their benefit, which is everything you've just done. You've defended the status quo, the system that has you as not wealthy, as a system that has the people that have power putting on you and telling you what your value is. They're dictating a market
Are they
and
dictating
your
a
value.
market,
So your oppression starts
because I wouldn't
right at
say
the beginning.
that GE is dictating the market. If anything, GE's competitors
You don't
who
think-
don't pay as much for their hardware techs are dictating the market. They make some billions.
How many billions does GE make?
I could.
How many hundreds of millions? Yeah, how many hundreds of millions do their
that's a very good
CEOs,
question.
do their individuals at the top make?
So
Hundreds
let's
and
do a
hundreds
quick
of
thought
millions of individuals making that money. Now, they're taking that money
I don't know
from
if
you.
I thought that money
That
was
is
mine.
partly your money. So the oppression,
Okay, so they're
not doing the work. You
that
are.
I do, but the work that I do is not the whole thing. Let's go up the ladder real quick. Let's do this little thought experiment because I'm just curious to kind of see where your head is at on this. Let's go up the ladder in terms of salary scale and skills brought to the table and figure out at what point.
See, you're already arguing about baseball from inside of baseball. You're arguing about the rules of Monopoly and saying, well, these are the rules because they told me these are the rules, and these rules are the best rules, and there aren't any other rules, so we can't play by any other rules. So let's talk about the rules. Not Stockholm
but with
Syndrome.
regards
The
to-
rules are great. There's no oppression. You're living in the Stockholm.
I don't know.
You're the embodiment of Stockholm Syndrome,
I mean,
arguing about how
right,
great
but-
your oppressors are.
Please don't.
Nothing's going to change. I'm trying not to get upset about it. I'm frustrated
so
by it.
So the question is this, very
but
simply
it's
this. Should
it's
I
not gonna
quit
change.
the job? If I'm being exploited at the point of production, should I just quit? Then I'm not exploited at the point of production anymore, right?
no,
But
no, we
I can
can't.
always
You can't,
quit.
or you die. You can't quit.
No. I can.
You're in
I don't
You're
have to
in
die.
Stockholm.
I can
You can't
always-
quit. You
I can
die.
take my
That's to
guitar,
quit.
and I can go down to a street
And do
corner
what?
next to a panhandler,
Yeah.
and make sure that that panhandler doesn't get any money at all, because everybody walking by with a spare dollar or fiver would put it in my thing, because I sound like tits.
If you could make as much doing
But I
that
can't.
as you
No,
are
no, no.
doing what you're
I
doing
would
now,
definitely-
you absolutely
That's
can
right.
do that.
I would be taking a pay
absolutely,
cut to
without
do that.
question. If you could make as much. Okay, so what you're starting at, right? So you're starting at your oppressors have given you a big enough carrot
Okay.
that you're unwilling to go out on your own and risk it.
Well, hang on a sec.
That's not freedom. That's a gilded cage.
But you said
I'm not
what you said
against
right
a
there
gilded
was the
cage.
operative word.
I'm not against it.
You see, what I did was I said I don't want that much risk, so I'm going to outsource the risk to somebody else. And literally now I've got a salary that comes in. It might not be millionaire salary, obviously, but it's a lot less risky. And so there's risk in life. There's risk in life. And
Because you have to, right?
if you want to make it as a musician, that's risky. If you want to make it as a hunter-gatherer, that's risky. But if you're in a position to, and thank God I am, to outsource that risk to GE, which I do, because they took a risk on me. I'm not the only one they took a risk on either. They're taking a risk on the markets. They're taking a risk on their whole entire enterprise.
Yep. Your oppressors are awesome. They are such great oppressors. I can't believe they allow you to work there.
If I ever get sick of it, believe me, I walk out
It's
the
amazing.
door. I do whatever I have to do. Hopefully I don't take too much of a pay cut, or maybe I will, or maybe I'll just be ready for it, or maybe I'll have some other enterprise in place to, counter it. But you get the idea. The thing is my option is to work here or don't work here, and it's all my choice. And I do choose it. But let's go back to the thought experiment just real quick.